The motorway between Frankfurt and Stuttgart, and scene once again of the German Grand Prix round 10 of the 1983 Formula One World Championship. This huge open stadium with its concrete grandstands absolutely full of excited Germans, and all down on the grid now, the mechanics, the marshals and the technicians making the last adjustments, the last finishing touches to the 26 cars that will start this 45-lap race. 45 laps of a 4.2-mile circuit and a very, very fast circuit. Always Hockenheim traditionally hard on engines. It's hot here today, as it usually is, for the German Grand Prix the first weekend in August. And there on the grid at the front, once again, the Ferraris. Patrick Tambay, last year's winner, on pole position this time, with his teammate Renault Arnoux alongside, just a fraction slower. But remember that 3 weeks ago in the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, they were fastest in practice, but in the race it was a different story, and it was Alain Prost's Renault that won. Prost back there on row 3, because on row 2 we've got Andrea de Cesaris in the turbocharged Alfa Romeo, and Nelson Piquet on the outside of row 2 in the turbo Brabham BMW. And remember the incident last year when Piquet, comfortably in the lead in this race, was punted off when he was lapping a back marker, Eliseo Salazar, and attacked him afterwards. The two Renaults on row 3 then. Baldi in the second Alfa and Patrese in the second Brabham are on row 4. We've got Derek Warwick in the turbo Tolman on row 5 with his teammate Bruno Giacomelli and the other Tolman. Row 6, Elio De Angelis in the first of the new turbo Renault-powered Lotuses, and Keke Rosberg, once again the fastest non-turbo, but notice that he is 6 seconds a lap slower, Keke Rosberg, than the pole position man Patrick Tambay, and that's an indication of just how much the turbocharged engine has taken over on fast circuits like this. Another turbocharged car, the new Honda of Stefan Johansson on row 7, with Thierry Boutsen, the young Belgian who is once again very quick in the non-turbo arrows. The rest of the field, including Nigel Mansell, who had to qualify the old Lotus Renault after his new car again gave him problems, and once again John Watson well down. There the championship positions with Prost a 6-point lead over Piquet, Tambay in 3rd place, and Rosberg still in the hunt in 4th place with the Williams on 25 points. And sad news for the German crowd, Manfred Winkelhock, their German hero, with the all-German ATS BMW, hasn't qualified. He had problems in Friday's practice. On Saturday, it poured with rain. Nobody could improve on their Friday's time. And Manfred Winkelhock and the ATS didn't qualify. They're out of the race. So as the grid is cleared, these huge crowded grandstands are watching. The light is green. The two Ferraris move away. And a tremendous charge in the middle of the grid. That white car is Stefan Johansson's Honda. But it's the Ferraris that get away with the Alfa of De Cesaris 3rd. It's Piquet 4th, but Patrick Tambay is in the lead. Away from the stadium section and on into the forests, this flat-out section before they get to the first chicane, which is inserted in this long, curving right-hand flat-out section to slow the cars down. Towards that chicane, they're jockeying for position, and into sight now, those two Ferraris at the front. With the Alfa 3rd of De Cesaris, it's the Piquet Brabham 4th, then the two Renaults of Prost and Chiva, the rest of the field streaming through. A little twitch there from the green car, that was one of the Tyrrells, it was Danny Sullivan, and on towards the slight chicane that has been inserted in the Ostkurve, the very fast section, but they're slowed down there as well. Two Ferraris, the Alfa, the Brabham and the two Renaults, the turbocharged cars of course dominating the proceedings. Everybody safely through the Ostkurve and on down the final straight, and look at Prost having a go at De Cesaris with Chiva watching him. He can't get past, so number 22, the red and white car of De Cesaris, holds that 3rd place. He holds it 4th place, in fact, because he's already lost 3rd. The Brabham of Piquet is ahead. It's Ferrari, Brabham, and now De Cesaris is 4th. Tambay leads back into the stadium for the first time. Tambay from Arnoux, from Piquet, from De Cesaris, from Prost and Chiva into the Saxkurve, the tight left-hander. Past the grandstands, Tambay and Arnoux in the Ferraris lead. That is Piquet, the 3rd place man. The two Ferraris go through, coming up to complete the first of 45 laps. And still De Cesaris is fourth, still those two Renaults behind him, fifth and sixth. Mauro Baldi is seventh, so both the Alfa Romeos going extremely well. And Nelson Piquet, who reckons he should have won this race last year, is already starting to put pressure on the Ferraris. That's Roberto Guerrero in the Theodore, less than a lap completed and his race is run. Roberto Guerrero out of the car, a smoking engine already. Hockenheim apparently proving already that it's going to be a very, very hard race on engines into the first chicane for the second time. The two Ferraris and the Brabham making a break, and Prost is through, and Cheever is trying to get past. Cheever alongside and on the grass. De Cesaris is not letting him through. Prost is by the Alfa Romeo. Cheever in the other Renault can't get through, and now Arnoux is challenging for the lead. A battle for the lead between the two Ferraris. Here is De Cesaris fighting off Cheever, and still successfully holding off the second of the Renaults, although he's lost a place to the first. That's Baldi, with Patrese behind him in the second Brabham. Patrese coming through, and Arnoux goes ahead. Arnoux takes the lead, and watch De Cesaris bumping wheels there with Cheever. But Cheever is through. So both the Renaults now past. This is frantic and exciting stuff on lap 2 of the German Grand Prix, with these very, very fast turbocharged cars battling for position, and the white crash helmet in the leading Ferrari confirms that René Arnoux has taken the lead from Patrick Tambay. Tambay, who won this race last year, sitting now behind his teammate, and he has got to defend the rear of the Ferrari attack because he's got Nelson Piquet's Brabham very close behind. Arnoux is getting away. Arnoux moves away from Tambay. There's Prost, and that's one of the notices. I believe that must be Nigel Mansell. That looks like Nigel Mansell parking, and for the second time already, as we're on the third lap, we have a smoking engine from the Lotus. Another car has bit the dust. Always this circuit so very hard on engines. So it's Ferrari. Arnoux the new leader, Patrick Tambay in second place. Tambay fighting off the third man. Here they are. Nelson Piquet of Brazil in the turbo BMW powered Brabham, and that's a very popular car with the German crowd here, of course, with its German BMW engine. Then it's Prost and Cheever, fourth and fifth in the Renaults, with De Cesaris demoted now to sixth place. There he's just coming into the picture there, with Patrese behind him, seventh in the second of the Brabhams. All the non-turbo cars well out of the picture at the moment, and they must just be hoping that they can make up in reliability for what they lack in speed here at Hockenheim. Behind Baldi, the second car in the picture now is Derek Warwick, still going well ahead of Stefan Johansson and Elio De Angelis. That's Toleman, Honda and Lotus. Elio De Angelis, the third of those three cars, as we look down on the crowded stadium. And Derek Warwick going well, not in the points yet, but Derek Warwick, the Hampshire driver, so longing at last to be able to bring home the Toleman in the points. It's something that's never happened yet. On to lap 4 for René Arnoux. And look how Arnoux is putting space between himself and Tambay. Arnoux looks uncatchable at the moment. Tambay is being caught not only by third man Piquet, but by fourth man Prost in the Renault. Then it's Cheever. Then it's the Alpha of De Cesaris, as we watch Arnoux into the first chicane for the fourth time. And Prost is certainly closing on that leading trio. Then it's Cheever, De Cesaris, Patrese, Baldi, Derek Warwick, and Elio De Angelis has passed Stefan Johansson. Before we get the non-turbos, there they are. The two Williamses leading the non-turbo charge. The two Williamses of the world champion Keke Rosberg and his teammate Jacques Lafitte running closely together there, but down behind all the turbos strung out ahead of them. Ferrari, Brabham, Renault. That's Alain Prost, current world championship leader, and very anxious indeed to score points today here in Germany. Out of the final chicane, on down towards the stadium section once more, and the cars spacing out on the straight. But watch how they close up as they get into the tighter section of the stadium. Arnoux, Tambay. Tambay through the Sachs curve. Clipping the apex, sliding across the road, working very hard to stay ahead of Piquet and Prost. Prost into the right-hander that leads onto the start-finish straight. Cheever following him. De Cesaris, Patrese, Balding, Derek Warwick. And that is the Tyrrell of Michele Alboreto, who parks on the entrance to the stadium section, and that's Nigel Mansell. Nigel Mansell running home, so it clearly was his car, his Lotus Renault that we saw parked. What bad luck and what a change of fortune for Nigel Mansell, who went so brilliantly into 4th place in the British Grand Prix, and that is Niki Lauda coming to the head of the non-turbo race. Lauda, Rosberg and Watson battling there, those 3 cars battling for the lead, with Lafitte following them, battling for the lead of, if you like, the second string race. Into the chicane, Lauda, McLaren, Rosberg, Williams, Watson, McLaren, and Lafitte, Williams following them. John Watson having what he hopes will be his penultimate race in a non-turbocharged car, because the Porsche developed engine, the new TAG turbo engine, which is going into Niki Lauda's McLaren, that's him there, and into John Watson's McLaren before the end of the season. It is hoped that they will be out by the Dutch Grand Prix, and that is Elio De Angelis in the pits. So already we've got Nigel Mansell out of the race in the old Lotus Renault, Elio De Angelis with the new Lotus Renault in the pits with only 8 laps completed. The leader's now on lap 9, and that pit stop taking on a very leisurely look. De Angelis sitting patiently in the car as we watch the 2 Renaults on lap 10 now. Prost and Cheever running closely together in 4th and 5th places. Still, it's Riccardo Patrese 6th. There is Patrese out of the chicane now, and behind him, not Mauro Baldi, of course, but Andrea De Cesaris, the first of the Alphas. The Alphas which went so well in the early stages, now slipping to the back of the turbocharged race, although not themselves looking particularly threatened by the non-turbocharged race led by Niki Lauda and Keke Rosberg, which is a long, long way behind. René Arnoux starts his 11th lap. Arnoux with his head tucked down in the cockpit so distinctively. And Patrick Tambay well back. We have an empty screen behind him. There is Tambay now. It's not Tambay. That's Nelson Piquet's Brabham in 2nd place. There is Prost and Cheever in the Renaults. And as we look back down the empty road, we're getting news that Ferrari number 27 of Patrick Tambay is slowly making its way back to the pits. There he is. Tambay slowly coming back to the pits. It doesn't look like a puncture. It looks as though all his tyres are present and correct. It's some mechanical problem, I think. But Tambay, who led the race from pole position, who was holding a secure 2nd place, now slowly makes his way back to the pits. Last year's winner with his head raised, and whatever that problem is, that is the end of Patrick Tambay's chances, surely. What a shame, but that means that Nelson Piquet, who led last year's race for so long before his accident, now sees himself in 2nd place and can start making a challenge. Now let's see what happens when Tambay comes into the pits. He's obviously not able to drive the car very fast. Whatever the problem is, he appears just to be coasting in. And the Ferrari pit, which is right up at this top end of the pits, are waiting for him. The hooter goes to warn people of cars coming in. Into the Ferrari pits, Mauro Forgieri in the blue sweater. They're going automatically into their refuelling and tyre changing routine, although the cars come in very early after only 10 laps completed. But this is clearly not a routine stop. They've got the car refueled and they're changing the tyres as a matter of course. There you see 5.6 seconds is Arnoux' lead over Piquet, with Prost and Cheever in the Renaults 3rd and 4th, Patrese Brabham 5th, and Cesaris' Alpha 6th. But what are they doing to Patrick Tambay? Mauro Forgieri in the blue shirt, discussing with Tambay what the problem is. Lots of Italian gesticulation. That's Michele Alboreto, the Tyrrell driver. We saw him park his car earlier. He walks home to the Tyrrell pit. We understand a blown engine for him. Ken Tyrrell in the green trousers walking over to speak to him. But what is Tambay's problem? The car is going out. There's a thumbs up. Mauro Forgieri is still talking to Tambay, but Tambay is rejoining the race. We can't know what the problem is, but he's rejoining the race anyway with fresh tyres and more fuel. But he's lost a lot of time, and that's put him right back at the tail of the field, because everybody has gone through except the Azella at the back of the field as Tambay rejoins. There is Arnoux completing now his 12th lap and starting his 13th. So Tambay with about 5.5 seconds. Tambay is passed by Arnoux. In fact, Tambay moves over because he's still warming up his fresh tyres. And I think from the speed that Ferrari's going, all is still not well. The Piquet Brabham was just in the picture there, coming up to pass. That's the Azella of Piercarlo Ghinzani, running at the back of the field, being lapped by Arnoux on lap 13. There is Nelson Piquet into 2nd place, and Tambay just doesn't seem to be going very quickly. I don't think that's just warming up his tyres. I think there's a worse problem there. Alain Prost in 3rd place, Renault number 15. Cheever in 4th place, Renault number 16. Both of them pass Tambay, and he's still crawling. And that's the Honda. That's Stefan Johansson. What a shame. Yet another car out of the race. Stefan Johansson stops. We did see the engine smoking earlier on, so that's only lasted barely 12 laps. Johansson walks away, runs away. He's going to cross the road and get to a safer place. Stefan Johansson, the young Swede, a very, very talented driver indeed. And when they get that Honda running right, I think Stefan will surprise quite a few people. Using every inch of the road, coming back into the stadium, is the leader, René Arnoux. Head tucked down in the cockpit as ever, clips the apex, comes through the sweeping curves that will lead back to the right-hander that takes him onto the start-finish straight. That's Ghinzani and the Azella at the back, who's been lapped. There is Nelson Piquet, and that looked to me like more than 5 seconds. I think Piquet is slipping back. There are the Renaults in 3rd and 4th places. That's Prost and Cheever, of course. As already René Arnoux is on lap 14 of the 45, coming up to 1/3 distance already, and goes away into the forests from the stadium, with Piquet a long way behind. The telephoto lens shrinks the distance. Into the first chicane, René Arnoux the leader in number 28. The Azella still to be lapped by Nelson Piquet in 2nd place. And Piquet now must try to close on that leading Ferrari. But remember that most of these cars, in fact all the turbocharged cars, there's Riccardo Patrese and the Brabham, Andrea De Cesaris and the Alfa, all of them are going to be making pit stops at around half distance, and there's Tambay back in the pits. Whatever the problem was, he did a very slow lap to see if it was sorted out. It isn't. The seat belts are undone. Last year's winner, Patrick Tambay, out of the car and out of the race. That's very sad indeed. Incidentally, Didier Pironi, who had that terrible accident in practice here last year, here at Hockenheim, which so shattered his legs, I'm delighted to say that Didier Pironi is here on crutches. He's eaten a plate of spaghetti with the Ferrari mechanics, and he's now watching the race. That's Raul Boesel about to be lapped. Raul Boesel, the Brazilian, who had a very unpleasant accident in practice, was taken to hospital but was pronounced fit after a fencing post. He went into the catch fences in the Ligier, and a fencing post grazed the top of an artery in his neck, but he's as you see, fit enough to race, although he is last but one in the field. And there is Elio De Angelis back in the pits with the engine smoking comprehensively. Hockenheim living up to its reputation of being a punishing circuit. De Angelis, who had a long pit stop earlier on, came back out again to try a few more laps. He's back in again, and the two Renaults are closing up a little bit. Eddie Cheever closing there on his teammate Alain Prost. They are third and fourth, with Riccardo Patrese still fifth in the second of the Brabham. So Brabham's second and fifth, Renault's third and fourth, and De Cesaris is sixth. Cheever with the red helmet and the blue numbers on his car, number 16. Prost with the red numbers and the white helmet. And this white helmet is René Arnoux, Prost's teammate last year, of course. No love lost between these two. I don't think René Arnoux was at all pleased to see, after his wonderful pole position at Silverstone, Alain Prost win the race. But he's doing it all correctly today. Arnoux then a comfortable leader. That's Danny Sullivan about to be lapped, and Johnny Cecotto about to be lapped, and that's Derek Warwick coming into the pits. Oh, that's very sad, because yet again the Tolman seems to be in trouble. This is clearly not a routine stop. The Tolmans were planning to make a routine stop, but we're only now on lap 20, so it's much too early, I would have thought. The Tolman into the pits for Derek Warwick as we watch Riccardo Patrese. Patrese coming under some pressure now from De Cesaris. Patrese passed De Cesaris earlier in the race. De Cesaris is now putting in a bit of a charge. Perhaps the tyres on Patrese's car are not as good as they were, and I think that De Cesaris is lining up to try and get that place back from Riccardo Patrese. Turbocharged four-cylinder BMW engine in the Brabham, turbocharged V8 in the Alfa Romeo. On round the Ostkurve section. And there is the other Tolman, that's Bruno Giacomelli, and he is still going reasonably well, although he is behind some of the non-turbos. You saw the two arrows there with Thierry Boutsen leading Marc Surer, the Swiss, the Belgian leading the Swiss, and they're about to be lapped by René Arnoux. Arnoux through the twists of the stadium. Arnoux, who frequently isn't as tidy as his teammate Patrick Tambay, always very fast, but a driver who tends to use the curbs and use the edges quite a bit. But now clearly not looking under any pressure at all from the second man, Nelson Piquet, and able to drive extremely smoothly. Coming up behind the two arrows, he's got Marc Surer ahead of him. Past Surer he goes, pulls out of the slipstream. Surer tucks in to try and get a tow to see if he can get past his teammate Boutsen. Boutsen is passed also by Arnoux, but I think Boutsen has kept his place. Yes, he has, although Marc Surer having a little look at the inside. It must be fairly galling for Surer, the very experienced Swiss, to find his teammate ahead of him. And this is the first of the routine stops. This is the Renault of Alain Prost. 13 seconds to change 4 tyres and to take on about 25 gallons of fuel, and Alain Prost is out of the pits again. And we're just going to calculate what that has done to his position in the race. All the men in front of him have still to stop, and that by our lap chart will have only dropped Alain Prost a couple of places, because Riccardo Patrese went by and Andrea De Cesaris went by. That's dropped him, and of course his own teammate Eddie Cheever went by. That's dropped him to 6th place. But all the 5 people in front of him have also got to make pit stops, and as ever, there's so much difference between a pit stop that goes perfectly well. I think the record is about 11.5 seconds to the Brabham team, and a pit stop which goes badly, which can take 25 seconds. 10 seconds, which are so hard to make up on the track, can be lost by a jamming wheel nut a driver not stopping at exactly the right point drawn on the road for his wheel change. So as we watch the new third man, which is Eddie Cheever, who still has his stop to make, of course, there is, that's the Tolman in the pits. That is Bruno Giacomelli's Tolman indeed. That is the second Tolman, the healthy one, or the one that was still healthy. So sadly, both the Tolmans now look to be out of the race, Giacomelli out of the car, and both the British Tolmans with their Brian Hart built four-cylinder turbo engines out of the race. As we watch the new third man, the American living in Rome, Eddie Cheever, and that he is the man he has just lapped, in fact. That's the world champion Keke Rosberg, and that shows just how much difference there is between the turbos and the non-turbos here today. But clearly all is not well with Keke Rosberg, because his own teammate Jacques Lafitte has moved comfortably ahead of him. On our lap chart we've got Lafitte in 9th place, but Keke Rosberg down in about 13th place now. Through the Sash curver, that long, slightly banked left-hander, goes leader René Arnoux. Arnoux, 35 years old. And he's in the pits, he's in the pit lane. This is the leader's pit stop. Now, traditionally, the Ferrari chaps haven't been quite as quick as the Brabham people. Let's watch how long this takes. Stops perfectly on the red arrow on the road, up on the jacks. The stopwatch is starting, the fuel's going in the middle, the tyres are going on. All the tyres are in place. Wait for the mechanics to hold their arms up, which says they've finished. And 13.08 seconds, that's a good one. 13.08 seconds for René Arnoux, and he is out again. That is the Azella coming out of Kinsani, but Arnoux is out, back onto the circuit, and let's look at the lap chart and see where he's come out. I think he's going to be out again in 3rd place, but we've got Piquet in the lead with a pit stop still to make. We've got Cheever in 2nd place with a pit stop still to make. And so a good stop for René Arnoux, and it's going to take an absolutely miraculously quick stop by the Brabham mechanics to be able to better that and make up the considerable amount of time that they'll have to make up to keep Piquet in the lead. Remember that although the pit stop itself may only take 13 seconds, that's one of the alphas in. That's actually Mauro Baldi. Mauro Baldi spins the wheels as he makes his pit stop on lap 24. Baldi back into the race. Remember that while the pit stop itself may only take 13 seconds, during which the car is actually stationary, there's the slowing down time and the starting up time again, and so the total difference between a car flashing by the pits at 145 miles an hour, as Nelson Piquet is about to do, and the time it takes actually to go through the full pit stop process is a lot longer than the 13 seconds that it took René Arnoux to stop. But here is the leader with the Brabham BMW, Nelson Piquet, the man who was cheated, was robbed of this win last year by a misunderstanding between him and a car he was lapping, which put him off when he had a very comfortable lead indeed. Nelson Piquet, so often very quick, but so often unlucky. And so far, anyway, the Brabham hasn't had quite the reliability. That is Eddie Cheever. So the second Renault pit stop, he keeps the engine revving. The tyres are done, the front tyres are done, the back tyres are done, the fuel's done. 13.5 seconds that was stationary, so absolutely nothing much wrong with that. About half a second difference between Eddie Cheever's stop for Renault and René Arnoux' stop for Ferrari. The mechanics doing this important role so quickly. Note that they all now themselves wear flame-proof overalls and crash helmets, because the consequences of an accident in the pits or a fire could be so serious. So the mechanics themselves now part of the science fiction world of full face helmets and flame resistant clothing. There's the Ferrari on its way, now in second place, of course, because Chiva's made its pit stop. Let's look at the order. The leader, there he is, back view of him going back towards the stadium. Nelson Piquet, the leader with the Brabham. In second place now, having made his pit stop, René Arnoux from the Ferrari. Third, Andrea de Cesaris in the Alfa. He's still got to stop. Fourth, Riccardo Patrese in the Brabham. He's still got to stop. And fifth and sixth, the two Renaults which have stopped. But this is interesting because now they've sorted themselves out. Chiva is ahead of Prost. Eddie Chiva, the American, is now fifth. Alain Prost is sixth. They've both made their pit stops. In seventh place now, it's Niki Lauda leading the non-turbocharged battle, and we don't think the McLarens are going to stop, so things looking comparatively good for the much less powerful Cosworth-powered McLarens of Niki Lauda and John Watson, who's right behind him. So now on lap 26, we're waiting for the pit stop for the leader, Nelson Piquet. And as I say, it's going to take a really extraordinary pit stop to bring him out in the lead ahead of René Arnoux. René Arnoux looking very strong indeed in second place, but knowing that the leader still has to stop. There's Prost, with Chiva having already gone through. And that's one of the Alphas. That must be Mauro Baldi's car being pushed back. So, De Cesaris' teammate Mauro Baldi in trouble. De Cesaris still going so very well. Still in fourth place, but he's got his pit stop to come. As we watch Piquet down into the chicane, clipping the apex. The three apexes looking so neat and tidy. The car bouncing on its suspension. Piquet always such a stylish driver to watch. And this dagger-nosed Brabham, always such a graceful design from Gordon Murray, the South African who designs and builds the Brabhams for the Brabham team boss Bernie Eccleston. The distinctive puff of flame that we see from so many of these, lovely line through that curve. The puff of flame from so many of these turbocharged engines as they come off the power, and unburnt fuel goes into the hot exhaust system, and you see puffs of flame as they come off the throttle. But he's on the throttle now, over the start-finish straight, off the throttle. There's the puff of flame as we see Jacques Lafitte leaving the pits. Jacques Lafitte leaves the pits with the Williams. And his teammate, Keke Rosberg, has still to stop. And that's interesting because John Watson has stopped. We were guessing that perhaps the McLarens wouldn't make a pit stop, but John Watson has also had a routine pit stop. There is De Cesaris having his. This is De Cesaris' routine stop. An Alfa who never quite managed to get it as right as Brabham or Renault. But the front wheels are done, the back wheels are done, the fuel's done. It's a good stop. The jack's away, 13.6 seconds for De Cesaris, and that's very, very good indeed for the Alfa team. De Cesaris back into the race on fresh tyres and with fuel to take him to the end. So perhaps we're going to see a good finish from Alfa Romeo at last. Nelson Piquet still with his stop to make. We're just wondering here at the commentary point as we look at the gaps, 12.1 seconds between Piquet and Arnoux. That's not enough for Piquet, who still has his pit stop to make. Patrese in third place now that De Cesaris has stopped. We are just wondering here in the commentary box whether the Brabham team can possibly have worked their double bluff that they tried to work at Detroit this year, of managing to send their cars through the race without a stop. But I would be very surprised. It's a hot day. The tyres that are needed to be competitive here aren't likely to last the full distance, and I would guess that the Brabhams are certainly going to stop. As we speak, it's Patrese in the pits. The Brabhams are indeed going to stop. That's Riccardo Patrese in the pits. The tall figure at the front is Gordon Murray. Oh, and it's a quick one. It's an incredibly quick one. 9 3/4 seconds. That has to be a record. 9 3/4 seconds for the car to be stationary long enough to fit 4 new tyres and put in 25 to 30 gallons of fuel, and Patrese is back on the circuit and driving like mad. So, a wonderful stop from the Brabham crew. Surely the quickest pit stop we've ever seen in modern motor racing. And that's the leader, Nelson Piquet, with his stop still to make. But with the Ferrari, you've got a glimpse of it in the chicane then, the Ferrari not very far behind. Into the stadium section once more. Nelson Piquet, former world champion, 30 years old, Brazilian, of course, living in Europe, lives actually in Monte Carlo now, as do so many of the regular drivers. That is Niki Lauda. That's Niki Lauda in the pits. Ron Dennis with the pump-on sign, the team boss at the front. They wave him out. There's a bit of rag round the front wheel, but that's soon blown away. And Niki Lauda out of the pits. We haven't got a time for that stop, but I'm told by the people who were watching that pit stop very closely as Niki Lauda came in that Lauda actually made a rare mistake there. He overshot the point where he was meant to stop and had to be rolled back by the mechanics to his point, and that will certainly have slowed down his pit stop. So Niki Lauda, not a copybook stop there at all, but clearly all is now well as we watch him in the chicane on his fresh start tyres, the Cosworth-powered McLaren, soon to be replaced by the new tank turbo Porsche-powered McLaren, which we'll be seeing by the end of August. Into the chicane goes the leading Brabham. A lap down, Niki Lauda into the chicane. And Watson has also made his stop. So we're just looking at the order for these non-turbo cars as we watch the leader Nelson Piquet, and his pit stop must be due. The puff of flame there as he came off the power. Niki Lauda. Oh, and that's Raoul Boesel. Raoul Boesel has parked his Ligier. Niki Lauda, we're just looking, is in 7th place. Watson is 8th. Jacques Lafitte is 9th. Mark Sura is now 10th. And they are the first 4 of the non-turbocharged cars. So it could be that Niki Lauda, despite his lack of turbo, could be in with a championship point by the end if one of the 6 cars in front of him gets problems. Watching now for Nelson Piquet. When is he going to make this stop? Will he dive into the pit lane? He does. He dives into the feeder road for the pits. The Brabham mechanics are ready. Puffs of flame from the exhaust. Piquet, the leader, comes into the pits, and this pit stop is crucial. Watch for the stopwatch. Does he park at the right point? He does. Gordon Murray at the front, pointing exactly to where he should stop. Notice the red arrows in the road, stuck down by the mechanics before the race. It's not as quick, but it's quick. 11.12 seconds. The revs roar. Spinning wheels. Away goes Nelson Piquet out of the pits, storming back into the race. It was quick, but it's not quick enough because back into the lead goes Ferrari number 28. René Arnoux has gone through. There he is in the chicane already, the first of the chicanes. René Arnoux is back in the lead with Ferrari number 28. So the pit stops among the leaders successfully completed, and interestingly the race has gone back with 30 laps completed of the 45. We're at 2/3 distance, and the race has gone back into pretty nearly identically the pattern that it was in before the pit stops, with the one difference that Eddie Cheever has come out of the pits ahead of Alain Prost, his teammate. That is Niki Lauda about to be lapped by the new leader. He was a lap behind Piquet before Piquet's stop, but 7th man, Niki Lauda, the leading Cosworth-powered non-turbo car, is lapped by René Arnoux in the Ferrari. At the back of the picture, that's John Watson. Watch Lauda tuck in behind to try and get a bit of a tow into the stadium. John Watson, you saw a glimpse of there in 8th place. He's also made his stop, of course. As we watch René Arnoux in the Ferrari through the Sachs Curva, Lauda following him. up to the right-hander that will take Arnoux back onto the start-finish straight. Interesting that Niki Lauda stays very close to Arnoux through the twisting section, and it's only on these fast open back straights that the Ferrari really pulls away. Very, very fast out of the slow corners is the Ferrari. So the Ferrari rocketing away. That's John Watson up in 8th place. And that's Jacques Lafitte, who is 9th. The Brabham there working its way through was the 2nd place car of Nelson Piquet, with Eddie Cheever not very far behind in 3rd place. So still a lot of excitement left in this 1983 German Grand Prix as the leaders work their way through the back markers. Jacques Lafitte up into the chicane. There's the gap now, 15.1 seconds, almost exactly 15.1 seconds after the pit stops. So that is the gap, and that's what Piquet has to make up, and that's a very, very big task indeed, with Arnoux clearly driving in a relaxed and comfortable way, looking for René Arnoux extremely tidy. Arnoux, a man who you can usually see is trying hard when he is. You see that head tucked down in the cockpit, you see him cocking wheels over curbs. And Piquet coming up to lap Jacques Lafitte. This is the 2nd man, Nelson Piquet in the Brabham. Ooh, and Piquet definitely using the curbs there. Piquet not so tidy on the first entry to the chicane. He's tucked in behind Jacques Lafitte. Now the power of the BMW turbo tells. In race trim, probably getting on for 200 horsepower more than the Cosworth, the 500 horsepower Cosworth in Jacques Lafitte's Williams. And Keke Rosberg in the other Williams on our lap chart, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13th place for Keke Rosberg. He's well down and clearly not happy with his car. The flames puffing from the exhaust of Nelson Piquet's Brabham as he crosses the start-finish line to start his 32nd lap of the 45. Now, we're going to put the stopwatch on this because we have a theory here that Piquet is, in fact, closing on René Arnoux. Now, whether Arnoux is going to let him get a bit closer but just try and keep out of reach, I don't know. But with a gap now of something like 13 seconds with about 11 laps to go, if Piquet can close at a rate of just over a second a lap, then he could get within striking distance of the leading Ferrari before the end. Now, quite often, after a pit stop, it may well be that Piquet's tyres are perhaps better balanced, doing a better job than his first set. Equally, René Arnoux' second set may not be quite as perfect as his first. It's not unusual for a car to feel better or worse after its pit stop. 11.8 seconds is the gap now after 33 laps. Cheever another 7 seconds down in 3rd place to Cesaris 4th, Patrese 5th, and there you see Alain Prost has just slipped back. Patrese has just got past him, and Alain Prost slipping back to 6th place. Clearly his Renault not performing anything like as well as teammate Eddie Cheever's. And it's so important for Alain Prost to score points here today. Remember, he's the championship leader. He's got a 6-point lead at the moment over Nelson Piquet. But with Piquet in 2nd place and Prost in 6th place, Alain Prost is going to be very anxious to try and improve on just 1 point, which is all he's going to get for 6th place. Meanwhile, Piquet, 2nd place and charging, closing this gap. We were saying that often a car can feel better or worse after its pit stop. Nigel Mansell was telling me that his wonderful drive at Silverstone 3 weeks ago, the first half, on his first set of tyres, the car was understeering badly. He was fighting the car quite a lot. They discovered later a balance weight had come off. 8.6 seconds is the gap now. Piquet is catching Arnoux very, very fast indeed. This is lap 38 of the 45, and Piquet is closing all the time. Mansell said that when he got his second set of tyres at Silverstone, they all had their balance weights on and the car was much better, and you've now got the two leaders in one shot. Arnoux with less than 9 seconds advantage, and I think that's coming down all the time. We'll get the stopwatch on them as they pass us for the 38th time. But Arnoux clearly being caught very, very fast indeed by Nelson Piquet. I think that if Arnoux were taking things gently, he wouldn't allow the Brabham to get so close so quickly. We've just started our stopwatch as he crosses the finish line to start his 39th lap. And as Piquet comes through, the gap is 6.3 seconds on our hand timing here. 6.3. So Piquet has, on his good laps, made up not 1 but 2 seconds on the Ferrari, and if he can keep that up, this is lap 39 of the 45. That is that blue car slowing. That is the Azella of Ghinzani. Ghinzani is slowing. He's been running at the back of the field. He's had an unscheduled pit stop, but all the excitement is at the front of the field. As Nelson Piquet, there he is, 6.3 seconds. That's what we made it, and that's what the official timekeeping makes it. 6.3 seconds at the end of 38 laps. This is lap 39, and they're coming back into the stadium once more, and Arnoux's pit signals will be telling him that he must not let the Brabham get any closer. Into the Sachs curve, out of the Sachs curve goes Arnoux, into the Sachs curve goes Piquet. And Piquet charging through with the Brabham as Arnoux turns smoothly onto the start-finish straight. The stopwatches are ready. Over the start line he goes there. We wait for Piquet. Piquet goes over the start line now, and I make that 5.6 now. 5.6 seconds. So he's made up 0.7 of a second on that last lap. It's less than 6 seconds with 6 laps to go. Piquet obviously urging every ounce out of his car. They've got Danny Sullivan's Tyrrell, the sole surviving Tyrrell, waiting for them ahead to be lapped. Arnoux out of the chicane, Piquet into the chicane, Piquet clipping the apex, accelerating hard, tucking his head down in the cockpit now in almost an Arnoux-like gesture as he goes through the Ostkurve. 5.6, yes, that's what we made it. That was when they crossed the start-finish line to start this 40th lap of the 45. Out of the Ostkurve, and this is where Piquet can look ahead and see his goal, and that must be such an incentive. Equally, Arnoux can glance in his mirrors and he can see the blue and white nose of the Brabham not very far behind. And are we going to have the German Grand Prix of 1983 developing into a wonderful closing battle? There's Danny Sullivan, the American from Kentucky, in the green Tyrrell ahead of them to be lapped. And Arnoux isn't going to get past Sullivan before they come into the Sachs curve, unless Sullivan keeps well out of the way. He does keep well out of the way. Sometimes lapping back markers can hinder a battle in the closing stages. Where's Piquet? There's Piquet. And we get the stopwatches ready once more at the completion of lap 40. Has Piquet got any closer? Piquet comes into the start-finish straight now, as already Arnoux has crossed the start-finish line and is through the start curve and up out of the stadium, and we make that 6.2 seconds that time. So, interestingly, somewhere, and it may have been in lapping, as far as Piquet was concerned, lapping the Tyrrell, which might have slowed him a little bit. It's now 0.6 of a second that Arnoux has made up on the gap. Yes, 6.48 seconds. That's what they made it. So it is opening out a little bit. But it only needs the slightest mistake by René Arnoux, and he is under pressure now, and he is a man who in the past has made mistakes. Neatly through the chicane this time. Oh, and that's Alain Prost actually being passed by Keke Rosberg. Now that's interesting because Rosberg himself has been having an unhappy race in the Williams, he's well done, but Prost clearly not going well now in the Renault. And as we bring you news of that, we are told that Eddie Cheever has gone missing. Yes, Cheever hasn't come through this lap. Somewhere Eddie Cheever, out of our sight, has run into trouble with the other Renault, number 16. So this is lap 42. We've got 3 laps to go, and it all seems to be going wrong for Renault in the very closing stages. Still René Arnoux the leader, still Nelson Piquet charging in second place. Now up into third place we've got, with Cheever's departure, Andrea de Cesaris. So a very good drive for him in the Alfa Romeo. Riccardo Patrese is still fourth. The slowing Alain Prost is still fifth. And would you believe it, there with the order you'll see that a lap behind, Niki Lauda has come into the points with the McLaren in 6th place. 6.4 seconds they have the official gap now at the end of lap 41. This is now lap 43 of the 45, and Piquet is really going to have to put the pressure on if he is to close that gap. Arnoux then into the chicane, and this time his mirrors are looking a bit more empty than they were. We wait for Piquet. There he is, Piquet in the chicane now. Oh, and that car's on fire. That is not just a turbo blowback, that car is definitely burning. This is Nelson Piquet in second place. He's still driving hard, but I think that car's on fire. Up to the Ostkurve chicane. Yes, Piquet knows it now. Piquet's parking. Piquet off with a great belching cloud of smoke. The marshal running across the road, and the car really now burning merrily. Yes, I think Piquet's overalls caught fire then. I think Piquet felt the flames. If you're stuck down in the cockpit with your little mirrors, very often the car can be burning before you know it. It happened to Riccardo Patrese's Brabham in the French Grand Prix last year. But Piquet out of the car, and now that he's put the flames out in his trousers, what he now must be thinking is all that work is in vain. He was closing on the leader, perhaps not closing fast enough, but 6 championship points in his grasp. And as the rest of the field go through the smoke, Piquet, crash helmet off, sits disconsolately up against the Armco barrier. All his work in vain, and his World Championship points chances in this race literally going up in smoke. So René Arnoux can relax. We're now on lap 43. In fact, Arnoux now approaching his 44th and penultimate lap. There's Piquet sitting quite unharmed, but a very, very disappointed man indeed. The marshals quickly on the scene. They've got the fire out, and Piquet doesn't seem to be able to believe his eyes. So René Arnoux on his way now. He is now on his penultimate lap, and that is good news, of course, for Andrea de Cesaris, because although de Cesaris is an enormously long way back, I would reckon something like 55 seconds behind the leader in second place, he is in second place, and that, if he can keep going to the end, is going to be a wonderful finish for Alfa Romeo. They've never yet managed a win or indeed a second place in a Grand Prix since they came back into racing for the first time since the 50s with the original V12 Alfa Romeo. Arnoux on his way, and that means that the other Brabham, the surviving Brabham of Riccardo Patrese, of course moves into 6th place. It also means that the slowing Alain Prost in the sole surviving Renault is now 4th. Niki Lauda is 5th in the non-turbo McLaren. John Watson comes into the championship board in 6th place. Jacques Lafitte still going in 7th place. As for the penultimate time through the Saxe-Curve comes the Frenchman René Arnoux, coming up to start his final lap with the Ferrari number 28. It was a Ferrari win at Hockenheim last year, but it was car 27. That was Patrick Tambay's. Tambay, an early retirement in this race as René Arnoux starts his final lap through the Startkurve, on away from the crowded stadium for the 45th time. with a back marker ahead of him to be lapped through the long curving right-hander, which is all absolutely flat out before he approaches the first of the 3 chicanes on the circuit. It's Johnny Cecotto's Theodore in front of him to be lapped. Johnny Cecotto, the Venezuelan motorcyclist, still going in the Theodore of Maurice Nunn's team. There we see the second man, car number 22, Andrea de Cesaris. He's just lapped the arrows of the Swiss Marc Sura as he comes onto the start-finish straight himself for the last time. René Arnoux is out on his final lap. De Cesaris onto his final lap. That's Marc Sura in the arrows. Both of the arrows still going of Sura and the Belgian Thierry Boutsen, although Boutsen has dropped back behind the Ligier of Jean-Pierre Jarier. And on to the final long straight, down to the stadium goes the Ferrari of René Arnoux. He's already won the Canadian Grand Prix this year. He comes into the stadium for the last time. The Ferrari sounding as healthy on the 45th lap on this punishing circuit as it did on the first, through the Sachs curva, swinging through that long left-hander, up through the complex of curves that lead to the final corner, the final right-hander, onto the start-finish straight. The checkered flag is waiting for René Arnoux. This is going to be his second win of the year. Up goes his right hand to acknowledge the flag, and as the Ferrari mechanics clap and cheer, René Arnoux wins the German Grand Prix. And where is the Alpha? That Alpha doesn't sound very good. This is de Cesaris, and I think all is not well with him, but he's nursing that car to the finish line. It may be running low on fuel, it may be some sort of engine problem, but de Cesaris has slowed dramatically as he nurses the Alfa Romeo on its way to what is going to be the best finish for Alfa Romeo in modern times. The car is slowing right down. De Cesaris urging his car, spluttering over the start-finish line, and he's done it. Andrea de Cesaris takes second place, and I think that Alfa Romeo hasn't got very many miles left in it. Still sounding healthy, Nelson Piquet's teammate, Riccardo Patrese, comes home for third place, and that's going to be his first championship points in a bleak season. Riccardo Patrese brings the Brabham home third. Alain Prost is going to be fourth, and all the rest of the field, there is Prost, all the rest of the field have been lapped. Only 4 cars, all of them turbocharged, run the full distance. Alain Prost, the only surviving Renault. Interestingly, all those 4 teams finishing in the first 4 have only brought one of their 2 entries home. Baldi's Alfa retired, Tambay's Ferrari retired, Piquet's Brabham retired so dramatically, Chiva's Renault retired. But they're going into the final enclosure where it will be weighed by the scrutineers. René Arnoux parks the Ferrari, is immediately swamped by admirers. De Cesaris 70 seconds behind in the end. Patrese third, Prost fourth, 2 seconds down. Lauda and Watson, both the McLarens, coming home first and second, if you like, in the non-turbocharged class. 2 championship points for Lauda, 1 championship point for Watson, with Jacques Lafitte finishing 7th, Marc Sura 8th, 9th was Jean-Pierre Jarier in the Ligier, 10th Thierry Boutsen. The unhappy Keke Rosberg plods on into 11th place, and there in the World Championship Prost extends his lead. Now 9 points ahead of Piquet, who didn't score, Tambay, who didn't score, a further 2 points down, and Arnoux moving up into 4th place with 28 points. Rosberg still there. Remember, he lost 6 points because of a disqualification on a technicality in Brazil, but he is still 5th, and John Watson still 6th. There's third man Riccardo Patrese wearily climbing up onto the victory rostrum as the laurel wreath is readied for René Arnoux. There, René Arnoux gets the spoils of victory to Cesaris on the left in the blue, Patrese on the right. Second win of the year for Arnoux. And already the teams are packing up for the drive south to Austria. We'll be there 1 week from now for the Austrian Grand Prix at the magnificent and very fast Österreich Ring. Join us then.